This episode is proudly supported by Anchor Food Professionals, makers of mainland cheese. Here's Andy Sy from the Notting Hill Hotel.
We've been using them for a few years now, using their tasty and mozzarella cheese. We go through about 135 kilos a week at the moment. So a huge number. So we use it for our garlic bread, our pizzas, our parmas, our bechamel, our cheese sauce for our croquettes and arancini, throughout our lasagnas, anywhere we can really. It's such a good product. You know, having the freshest chips to your fresh chicken to a freshly crumbed schnitzel and topping up with a really high quality cheese is amazing.
For more information, go to anchorfoodprofessionals.com.
They're learning a lot, but they're being exposed and they're being expected to learn a lot. You know, I guess I'm teaching with all the knowledge that I have, and my knowledge, I believe, is improving day to day. So I'm exposing my team to all I know. There's no secrets. You work here, you have everything. Like, you know, it's all yours.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. I cannot believe it's been 5 years since we last caught up with today's guest, a chef and restaurateur who has fostered an amazing alumni and continues to set an example of not only top-end dining, but positive hospitality culture too. Dan Hunter is a chef and co-owner of Brae in regional Victoria. Dan, how are you?
I'm very well, Huck. It's definitely been too long. I'm sure you've aged a little bit like I have. I hear you're approaching a milestone birthday very soon, so congratulations on that.
Thank you for bringing that up. It is amazing, isn't it? The years seem to just fly by at the moment, even though there's challenging times. But how are things there in Brae at the moment?
Things are good. Things are look, the sun is shining today. We've had some, you know, it's funny, Brae is obviously we're here to talk about restaurants, I suppose, a little bit. That's sort of the focus of these conversations, that they involve people that work in our industry. But, I mean, Brae is unique in the sense that not only is it a restaurant and operating with all the needs and requirements and sometimes difficulties that entails, but it's also an agricultural project based in a regional and rural community. So it's got, you know, it has multiple needs occurring all at once all the time. And so, you know, when I'm asked that question, like, how's Brae? It's like, well, you know, which part are you referring to? Because it's not a simple answer very often. And you know, I think it's you know, we can focus on various things at once, you know, also. But it's, I mean, you know, this morning, the sun is shining, and I just chased a blowfly around the house for 5 minutes before we hooked up, because I was just like, I'm not going to be able to deal with that going on. So yeah, I mean, look, we're at the end of a very dry period environmentally, and I guess the weather hasn't been great for a good 12 months, but we're having a very wet spring, and now the sun's out and lots of things are growing very quickly. So it's you know, it's the bumpy bounce around of wishing things to be perfect and as you want them to be, and dealing with the fact that never occurs with anything, you know?
Yeah. From the outside looking in, many people, you're rightly so, just sort of picture Brae as the restaurant. But tell us about the property, and because it's huge and you're growing so many things and connecting with the local community. Just give us a sense of what is going on there.
It's 20 acres. So, I mean, I don't know how you'd describe that for those who don't fully comprehend or are able to visualise what size is, but let's say 20 acres could be, I don't know, 2 to 3 city blocks in Melbourne maybe. So if you imagine a city restaurant and what that's got to look after outside of its front door, it's big, 10 of those acres are sort of just an agricultural block, which we dedicate to grain production, and not all the time and not every year, but within a cycle of ensuring that the land is cared for in a regen fashion, therefore inputs being a priority as much as outputs are. And then the other 10 acres is where the restaurant sits, the car park, the accommodation, large fruit orchards and olive grove, and then a kitchen garden on a market garden scale. So, not just rosemary flowers, but a large, highly productive organic vegetable plot, which in most seasons will be producing 160 crops at any one time. The average market garden that you see supplying restaurants probably grow up to about 40 at once. And this is a very complex, very detailed, very high production space led by Joe Lawson, our head gardener, basically growing things for the restaurant and for use in our accommodation and for sort of more retail production, cordials, jams. Our beverage program relies heavily on it. It's a project, that's for sure.
I just wanted to talk about the relationship between dish creation and what's growing in the garden. Are you growing things specifically for what you have in mind to cook further on, or are you letting the garden speak to you at the right time of year? How does that relationship work?
Yeah, it's both. It's not one or the other, but it's both running together. And I think that's true for lots of things that we do. Like we don't necessarily we're organised, let's say, and we're very detailed, and we have a strong focus on pre-planning and now 12 years of understanding what's possible in this region within our climate and with the skills and hands that we have. So there's a history that we rely on each year. And Jo's very good in the sense that she can provide a base level of seasonal appropriate food for us. But there's also the need to try new things each year, and we might see things out in the wild on our travels and wish to try them here and see how they go. And they may be a 2 to 3 season turnaround to be something that's productive enough that we can supply the kitchen for any that has any real relevance to being something that can go on the menu. But it's both. And I react very, very much to the environment in a sense. Like I find that I'm most creative when things are in front of me and can be stimulated by my experience with those ingredients, but I also need to have new things and see them come on board and try them, and also just rely on I guess the bank of dishes that we have in the vault now, so each year we can roll into things that we're comfortable with, and to make some of the work that we do a little bit easier, without regurgitating things all the time. But certainly, we might start next year with things that we finished last year within that season, but didn't fully nail and want to see more of, and so therefore those ingredients would be high priority for growing in the following year. But specific crops, look, take a long time to analyze how things went year to year, record the volumes that we used for certain, for all ingredients, and then ensure that we have that plus the extras minus things that we didn't like, for example. And I mean, now also after the last summer, which was so dry, and the 12 months surrounding it was so dry, this year in summer, we've pulled the pin on lots of root vegetable crops because we just don't feel like we'll have the water to get the quality we require. And so, we're actually, I mean, it was only 3.5 months ago that I thought we wouldn't have water in January, February coming year. It literally, we had no water at the end of, even into winter, we had no water. So it's been pretty dramatic in that sense, and it's been a desert actually. So really trying to analyze what we can get by with and still be a summer, speak of summer, but also be realistic about what we have on the property and our requirements, and then looking for different ways to reduce water use, to grow things much more in a, Southern Mediterranean style dry cropping type arrangement, which we tried last year with some tomatoes and had a really phenomenal result. So there's ways around things.
There's been an incredible alumni, both back and front of house, that have come out of your restaurant, and guests that we've had on the show that have talked about their experience and the influence. What's it like seeing young professionals come to work for you and go through the processes that they have with you and see them grow? Like, how much do they change given the connection they have to the environment and the professionalism within the kitchen and your ability to nurture and create career paths for staff? Like, how do you see your staff grow?
I mean, yeah, like I would say that probably haven't been the greatest nurturer at times in my career, and something certainly as I become better at being a mentor and being a leader of people, it's something which is always improving. But as you say, there's also been lots of people really appreciate their time in our organisation and the structure and the discipline and the expectation, but also the skill sets that they've taken from that experience. And I think, I think the greatest reward as a leader in an organisation is to watch people's abilities change and more so their attitude to the work at hand and their commitment to excellence be refined and be sort of buffered up in a sense. I think it's we live in a very, we just had the Good Food Guide Awards on Monday night, and we had some of our team represented in those awards. Alex Casey, our restaurant manager, was awarded the Service Excellence Award, which we're very proud of him for. And Angie, one of our chef de parties, who's, in her early 20s and moved here, has been here for a couple of years, has worked up from a commie to a chef de party in that time. And she was a finalist for the Young Chef Award, which we're very proud of her for as well, and proud of her for putting herself out there, just putting her hand up to say, I want to be, I want to see what it's like to be judged in a sense, But it's really great to see young chefs, young floor staff, young people who are, have been in great places and to work here and throw themselves out there and really upend their life, so to speak, like move from a city generally, move to a small town where they don't know anyone generally, often share a house with another staff member, which I'm sure is a pain in the ass sometimes, and just sort of dedicate their life for for what in all honesty is usually a pretty good stint of time. Like we have a pretty good staff retention here, and people do tend to spend a few years working here, and watch their growth. And I mean, we're just talking about this morning, Jules and I, about some staff members who more recently have really blossomed in that sense and have really become great communicators, and really you can see them take pride in the fact that they belong in this environment and that they're working in this environment, and just doing those extra things in the day, like saying hello to everyone, like the things that actually count as a team member, like checking in on people, saying hello, letting people know when lunch is ready, doing the tasks that don't seem to appear on a resume, but that are the key human things that make a place a good place to work, or a good place, the environment a good place to be. So I guess the learnings here are very specific on the procedures and the techniques that we have and are yet to have, but also working towards here. But I guess the focus at times are on skill sets that are interchangeable and beneficial for humans. It's on, integrity, and on clarity of communication, and on, excellence, and agreeing to things and fulfilling those agreements, and, these things that are sitting underneath the revered skill sets of being a bloody chef, but are the defining qualities of those who are really great at doing so.
You mentioned that the Good Food Guide was on, and the amazing staff that had been acknowledged, and obviously Brae was acknowledged again as well with 3 hats. But the thing that stood out for me that night was your response on social media, and a wonderful message that talked about the vision of Brae and your vision, not only about just the goals, but the goals for the community and the environment and the team. Hospitality culture has sort of been knocked a little bit recently, particularly in the media and with negative press. But talk to me about positive hospitality culture and what you guys see and feel as workers in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's been knocked, but I mean, to some degree, deservedly so. I think, it's. The other side of it is that we're not perfect people because we're people, and I guess, there's been a lot of focus on the extremes, and I guess that's necessary sometimes to cause a calibration. Like, you draw out the worst case scenarios, and people have had to live through those, and it's, it's terrible, and it's not, without trying to balance it, it's still not just something about hospitality. And I think, unfortunately, there's a bit of a narrative around that, which is a bit tough to swallow some days, because we're also living at a time when there's lots of shit humans doing lots of shit things to people that don't deserve it, and they don't run restaurants or work in restaurants, and actually, in the scheme of things, restaurants are probably in the minority, because we've had cases of universities underpaying people, and huge media corporations underpaying people and doing terrible things, and cultures of sexual abuse, in the finance industry, and in all of these things, and doctors also work for free to get their degrees, as do, psychologists, like it's but restaurants are being sort of torn down a little bit, and that's tough when you work in that industry and you've been in it your whole adult life and you hope to leave a positive impact, because it almost it's a bit scarring in a sense. Like, what are we doing? But it also has to be done, and it needs to be. We need the calibration that I think is occurring, and we need people, even like ourselves, to then reevaluate best case scenarios and work towards that, whilst also failing at it regularly. Like it's But I think at this moment, and we can talk about post-COVID as a time period, but I think this is all happening. This reevaluation of how to run a hospitality business today was occurring before this, so we shouldn't just both blame COVID but also hold it up as the time when everything changed, because really, we'd been looking at cultural improvements pre-COVID and wishing to leave a better impact on our people and our community and the environment before that. And honestly was a guiding sort of focus at the start of when we started the restaurant and started the business. And, we get lots wrong. It's a fine balance, which I struggle with a lot, between, really wanting to do things a certain way, a way that I understand and know, a way that I've had success with, and a way that's comfortable for me, the way that I like to be managed and have done, and the bluntness and the clarity that I like in direction, and the push for precision and technicality that I've personally benefited from and enjoy, but also understanding with time and with reflection and practice and feeling bad about yourself sometimes. It's not for every person, but you still got to get a result, and you still got to have a place where people are being challenged and enjoy the work and wish to contribute, So it's a big balance constantly. And I guess that's, if anything, these, more extreme situations highlight the fact that we are working with people, not robots and machines, and we want to stay in the industry long term, and we want it to be recognised externally within society as having the cultural significance that I believe that restaurants and hospitality has. And therefore we've got to work on these parts of ourselves and our industry and our businesses, I guess. And, it's every generation evolves somewhat. And I think what we're doing at this period, I hope, and I believe is the case, and I believe lots of our industry leaders are, and certainly a lot of the next generation, probably under myself and my peers, they're having a really positive impact on people and their communities, which is great, and you couldn't say the same for all industries at all, to be honest. I think it's very few industries at this moment that are considering, as a group, all the all the nuts and bolts of life, like the tech industry doesn't give a shit about the environment. The finance industry doesn't give a shit about people as far as I can see, So we're sort of often pushed out as this low-level industry, although we contribute hugely to society, and we're sort of being, I think, leaders at the moment in being an industry that is all-encompassing in our outlook, and I think that's a pretty good place to be in.
I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. You're absolutely spot on. There's not many people on the planet that are sort of at your level in the restaurant game in regards to discipline, dedication, all of these things to create what you create. I'm fascinated to see the steps of how you get to that level. Like, can we go back to when you were young? Like, where did you grow up, and was food really important from a young age?
I don't know. It's like we shouldn't glorify things too much, but I come from a pretty caring and loving family, which is nice. And we weren't gastronomes, that's for sure. I grew up in a town called Bairnsdale in East Gippsland in Victoria, 3 hours from Melbourne. There's lots of appreciation of the outdoors and bush. I played a lot of sport, I'm highly competitive. Tried to become less competitive as I get older, but it's certainly something that's showing up in my daughter at the moment, which is I'm quite fond of. But Jules sort of is like, I think she sees it as maybe a negative. I'm not sure. Just not disciplined as a kid at all. Not particularly good at school, but always creative, played music, played a lot of sport. Didn't probably know my creative value until leaving school. And interestingly enough, through COVID, I was looking at some old boxes that were in the shed of mine and had my school reports from prep, grade 1, this type of era, and all throughout them was Daniel's very creative. Just be good if he didn't talk so much. Loves a discussion. Always keen to have his opinion, all that sort of stuff. And played competitive tennis quite seriously, and sort of thought I was pretty good at that, and sort of got to 17 or so, and just burnt out. Just couldn't cope with the one person show that is tennis. It's and particularly at a junior level in the 80s. In a country town, there wasn't the psychological support at all for the pressure that was on people that were showing some level of dedication and that they're particularly good at it, So looking back later and wondering where my drive has come from, I just feel like I fried a bit back then, and so I just become completely non-competitive after that, and just I literally haven't played competitive sport ever again since. I've had about 5 hits of tennis in 30 years, It was a bit full on actually, but and then just after that, just went to parties, just moved to Melbourne and just got on it, to be honest. Just went for it. Just got to a techno club and was like, I am home here. This is it, and just fell in with a group of people who are now my closest friends and met people at parties. And, even now today, we do some external sort of training classes with our team. And one of them is, like a performance through movement course that we do. And one of the teachers of that or the teacher of that, the instructor is Simon Sleeker, is a close friend of ours who's recently in the last couple of years moved to the Otways as well. And, he's a fully fledged DJ from the 90s, and we literally met at a club we used to run. And so just did that. And for a long time, like a long time. And was doing that for a long time also, even when we lived in Spain, moved to Spain to cook. We moved to Spain because in Barcelona there's amazing clubs, But yeah, then got into cooking. Then literally, and then was very much in an escapist type situation, like want to leave Australia. Just childhood stuff maybe there as well. Like, moved a lot as a kid, lived in a lot of different towns, in the city first, and then moved to a country town and just felt a bit lost, to be honest. Like, what are we doing here? Parents separated when I was very young, and not that it was negative or in any way harmful or hurtful or anything. I was very, very loved by both families. But I still was there, and I guess as an adult, there's maybe some stuff in that. And then just moved to Melbourne and just partied and escaped, and then started traveling a lot. Like literally, just wanted to get out of Australia. And first place I went was India. I went to India when I was like 21, and I went there for 3 months by myself. And there's a time when like no one knew where I was, and I was doing crazy stuff, and things were like, you send a postcard to communicate. There wasn't even, or there was you could go and sit in a room and they'll try and connect you on a phone and say make 2 phone calls in 3 months, and literally just this sort of apparently find yourself type of thing, but it, just again, just having fun really. And then when we got back, Jules was, she was planning to go to Africa, and she, her and a friend were going, and I was just trying to get some money together to go with them, which I didn't know how to do. I didn't have time, but just started washing dishes. And I had done that. Like literally when I was about 19, I did a couple of shifts at what was a pretty well-known seafood restaurant in Melbourne at the time, Ribera's. Was on the corner of Alexander Parade and in North Fitzroy. And on my first shift as a kitchen hand there, and being a pretty loose 19-year-old at the time as well, like, just was not really aware of stuff. And they had this bloody, they had a glass door in the kitchen that swung inwards onto the, where the pot wash was. And I, mid-service on a Friday lunchtime on my first shift, dropped a stack of black iron pans, slipped off the edge of the stainless bench, and just went straight through this fucking window. And just like you've never heard a sound like this in a restaurant before. Like this is like what it must have sounded like when, the mafia was shooting up windows in Calabria. Like it was just an absolute like gunshot going off, and this thing just shattered into like a million pieces. And I remember the owner of the restaurant, I think his name was John Ribera. He'd come off the floor and he's just like, what the fuck is that? And I'm just like, Anyway, the head chef at the end of it, she's like, oh, don't worry about that. John says you can come back, like you did a good job, And honestly, I sort of felt like I I needed something to prove to them and sort of make up for this big issue that obviously was expensive and it was a bit of a drama. So I just went back. I went back and washed dishes there for a few weeks. And again, it was a few weeks because it was cash in hand. You know, it was cash money. It was the time. Get it paid to cash. Was on the dial. Got cash. Something probably came up and I didn't show up, to be honest. Like, you know, and I stopped working there. Anyway, after traveling, started working in kitchens again. Started as a kitchen hand. I was in really shitty jobs. I was literally assembling light fittings, imported light fittings in a warehouse in Carlton in Faraday Street. Company called Load Lighting, run by Italian guys. I loved it. Jules' family's Italian. I just loved being with these guys at lunchtime and watching their lunches and drinking espressos all day. It was amazing. And then I'd ride from that job on my bike. We lived in North Melbourne. I'd ride from Carlton to North Melbourne. I'd quickly eat some bananas or something, and then I'd ride to, like, not Kensington, near Kensington. I worked at a pub there, and Moonee Pond, sorry. And I worked at a pub there in the evenings, and I just washed dishes, and I did that until I had enough money to travel again. And when Jules left, I moved down to Apollo Bay. I got a job as a kitchen hand in a small bistro in Apollo Bay, Buff's Bistro. This is sort of early 90s. I did 3 months down there and just washed dishes. And in that time, I'd make the staff sandwiches after work and I'd fry a few fish and chips and I'd get exposed to, like, you know, some pretty classic 90s cafe food really, and thought it was all pretty good and loved being in the kitchen and just liked as poor as it may have been, the camaraderie of that and the acceptance of different people in our industry. You know, it was a pretty rogue time to be working in kitchens, and did that for 3 months and then left to live overseas for a couple of years. Met Jules in Amsterdam, obviously. Partied for a few weeks and then moved to the UK and went to the Glastonbury Festival. That happened the first 3 days, broke into the Glastonbury Festival. And on the way back from the Glastonbury Festival back to London to stay with some friends, we're covered in mud. It was a really full-on year. It rained a lot and ended up getting off the bus in Bath and stayed at the YMCA there. And there was a notice on the board there looking for a chef at a pub in Bath, at Blathwaite Arms. And I applied for that job and said I was a chef, and I was so desperate. And I didn't even own a knife and never had. And I got that job, and I did that job for, I think, the next 9 months, and had days where I ran that kitchen in some services with the kitchen hand Clive England, who used to dress up in a tartan skirt and paint his face and drink a gallon of cider in the break in the afternoon. And it was just mayhem. And that was my introduction to cookery. And yeah, I stole some books from the Bath Library, and I've still got those books. And I got myself through the general introduction to understanding of the terminology of cooking. I couldn't work out what a braise. What's a braise? Like, how do you make it? What is a braise? You know, and I just decided to do that. And we went to Mexico after that, and I just had an experience in Mexico where my whole value system was rearranged, and I just put cooking and food and restaurants and everything that surrounds the culture of eating as my number one priority based on that trip, because it's just so prevalent in Mexico that it's so important. It's everything stems, all celebration, everything's just got, it involves eating, and it just seemed like the absolute core of humanity to be involved in food, because all families do it, all celebrations have it and need it. Hedonism requires it, it's just so appropriate. And anyway, decided to take it seriously. I went back to London and worked for 5 months as a casual chef at this stage now, because I've got 9 months being a chef apparently. And I worked the whole time in a aged care facility in Kensington, like a really wealthy one, actually. And just made purees for literally for 6 months, 8 months or something. And came back to Australia and was like, okay, I better get an apprenticeship. And Jules supported me in the first couple of years of my apprenticeship while she worked, and I got, I'm pretty sure it was $210 a week for the first year, and just decided to really just go for it. And that was nearly 30 years ago.
What's been the really sort of important restaurant or moment, sort of turning point in your career as you built it as a chef? Was there a really key moment or a key mentor that shifted your thinking in the kitchen?
I think mentors, they can be many things, can't they? They can be a disciplined chef you work with for some time, or if you're open to it, they can be your colleagues, and not necessarily be someone that sits above you in an organisational structure or things like that, So, or they can be a friend who you value their opinion, So I think, and I feel like I have more mentors all the time now. Actually, it's funny because I think I'm probably, as we should be, open to learning more from different people, and you can see more value in various opinions that aren't necessarily your own, I suppose. So like the classic ones for me are, I worked in a restaurant called the Melbourne Oyster Bar. It's where I started my apprenticeship. And Adrian Upwood put me on a path, so to speak, but a path I was very, very willing to be put on, and had decided I want to be on that path, So he sort of just made the space for me. But he, I remember one day when we were cleaning lobsters, we got a huge female lobster in. It was massive. He cooked it and we ate it. We didn't serve it to a guest. He's like, this is too good for the guests. This is for us. And we sat around and we ate this fucking lobster, and it taught me an amazing lesson about deliciousness and about enjoying and things like that, like gluttony in a sense, like in a positive sense, like it's just like a lot of chefs haven't fully experienced what they're talking about or what they're aiming for. And I think if you're not out there all the time, like putting yourself in situations where you get to consume and eat as you hope your guests would, you don't have the knowledge to talk to them properly, And then he made the phone call to Philip Michel at Langton's for me. He was like, there's one place for you to work. Langton's had 3 hats. I went from washing dishes, breaking windows, 9 months or something working, with a punk kitchen hand whose number plate said Zoom, and would play Alice Cooper in the kitchen. He would pierce him. I saw him pierce himself with a pin out of the first aid kit one day, and just say "Welcome to my nightmare" to the staff. And then, you know, blag him away through some work there, and then 2 years in my apprenticeship, and then a 3-hat restaurant where there was adults working, and there was adults working who had been around. And, you know, in that situation, Joe Varghetto runs Mr. Bianco in Melbourne, has been a long time and at times distant friend, but we always communicate, and I would consider him a mentor. He just returned literally from working for Marchesi, 3-star in Italy, just before I started there. And he was going, like he had he had systems and he had a work ethic. And obviously Philippe, you know, he still works today. And I remember walking into that kitchen and just going, fuck me, I'm in real strife here. Like I'm in a bit of trouble here. And seeing a sack of oysters with, like, you know, like a sack of oysters, let's say there's 60 dozen oysters in there, and just me and another guy having to shuck them before lunch service, plus do a section. It's just like we're going down here, you know. So Joe, I would say, is a mentor, Philippe a mentor, and then Jeremy Strode took over that restaurant, and you know, I think you may know about my relationship with Jeremy, but we were very close in that period, and he remained someone who was very supportive of me, and he and Jane, to be honest, and these are mentors that always show you what to do, or who you are trying to emulate, because they're full of bad habits, some of them, you know. But they open your mind and they point you somewhere. Like at the time, I remember Joe showing me a magazine in Italian, which I couldn't read, with an article on Ferran Adrià from El Bulli. And he said, you know what you want to do? You want to go to Spain, because fucking Spain is blowing up right now. And from when he said that, I just honed in on that idea. And so after 2 years at Langton's and a year working for Simon Denton at Verge, who I would also consider a mentor, and whose front of house team, you know, Ainsley Lubbock, Shane Lazo, Jeremy from the Fink Group, you know, these people are pretty serious front of house team and run teams today. We all worked together at that moment for Simon. And so all of them, you know, are they friends or are they mentors? They're probably mentors in some way, because they've always pushed me forward, and they've always been there, as casual and distant the relationships might be. There's always a generous feeling of support from all of those people towards me, which I've always really appreciated, you know. And they're very, you know, they're all people who are really proud of you, and they're the people who tell you that they're proud of you, you know, like and that's what being a mentor is too, you know, because as selfish as it might sound, the higher you go, the more it might seem like people appreciate you because the guests are in your restaurant, and you might have some things written about you. It's when people you trust and admire yourself show you respect and care that you feel really validated for your work, you know. So there you're there, and I'm in Spain, obviously, worked at a place that's well known, and again, was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, and found myself in a position of responsibility and leadership probably well before I was ready to do that, and declined to do that before I accepted that role. But then, I mean, the general manager of the restaurant at the time, Marcel, really looked after me in Spain and was a huge mentor in that period. And then the other core members of that team, obviously Andoni, you know, is a freak of nature and very disciplined, but also very loose person at the same time, and a very deep thinker and communicator, and always being in his presence is a really wonderful and enriching experience for me as well, because he's always very generous in his comments and support about, you know, that my career and the impact that he feels I had on them, which is always, you know, slightly hard to believe, but it's nice, you know. I actually cooked with him in December last year at a restaurant in Singapore, Iggy's, and Iggy and his partner Janice was just at our restaurant last weekend for the first time since 2017, and Iggy also is someone who I'd consider a really big mentor of mine, because he's like I believe one of the leading gastronomes on the planet. You know, he's eaten everything everywhere at all time periods that we can all remember and have been alive within, through. And he just introduced me to so many foods and so many things in Asia, and it's taken me to so many random places where I've experienced great, like extraordinary meals that aren't known restaurants and aren't places that are celebrated publicly, but are just like really, really genuinely good, you know. And then I guess today, Jules is my wife, but, you know, she's brings a side to the business that I could never do by myself, you know, so she's there and so it's mentorship is, it's important, and it's easier to do than I think we acknowledge, and it's something we should all probably try to do more of, I guess, you know.
Tell us about the creation of Brae. I know you came back to Australia before that, but creating your own business like that and building what you have built in this period of time, what you envisaged at the beginning compared to what it is now, is it different, or like where are you at with what you thought of originally?
It's really in line with what we envisaged. But we didn't envisage that what we envisaged would be this, if that makes any sense. You know, like we did want a restaurant of this nature. We did want it to have some accommodation. We did want it to be on a farm that was big enough to support all the things that the restaurant did, but not so big that it became a burden and was just a farm, you know. We wanted it to be under 150 k's from Melbourne. It's 139, I think. We wanted it to be in a town, but not on the main street, somewhere just very close. So we're 2 k's from Birregurra. And then it'd be close with transport, and it's an hour to Avalon, and it's under 2 hours to Tullamarine Airport. We wanted it to be on the west side of Melbourne because we liked the beach and we liked the Great Ocean Road, and we'd been working with growers and producers down in this area for 6 years up to this point, and so we wanted to maintain some of those relationships. And yeah, I guess then once you bedded all that down, which took, you know, it took 4 years of planning and looking and rewriting and writing business plans for different sites. And, you know, at the time of initiation, we did have other partners as well. We had 2 partners that were with us until last year when we purchased the business from them. And they're still owners of the property, and we leased that from them. But we've always done everything to the property as we wanted to do, and as much as the business could afford. You know, the business has been generating its own future since that moment. And then I guess once that was all, and you know, all of those things came from the life that I've described so far today. They came from, you know, having values around what gastronomy, what it is and what it means and what it can do and how it can affect, you know. And then I guess from a social point of view, you know, like we weren't exposed to these things growing up. Like we both come from, you know, Jules from an immigrant family of very super working class, and myself the same, like not a new immigrant family, but just an Anglo, very working class family, and without big plans and hopes within those families, just sort of getting by, and so a lot of the stuff that we've brought to this is all just is because we like it, and it's self-learned, and we see value in it, you know. And Jules is very, very socially minded, and you know, in previous times was working in adult literacy and working with new migrants to Australia and helping to improve their literacy in English in support centres in Footscray in Melbourne. And, you know, like I guess we just sort of rolled all that up into a ball and have just been unravelling it ever since with the restaurant, and hoping to have an impact that's impactful. That's both appreciated on face value, but for what it's worth, for inside the dining room at the table, for what we do for our guests, and then, you know, running parallel to that and not above it or below it, but equally for our team, and then for our wider community. And our community means our immediate community, those who we work with for the restaurant, but also where we live and those in that community, and how a business can affect positivity within a small community. But then, I mean, your communities goes on and on, doesn't it? If you don't put walls up, your communities, everyone you come into contact with, and if you take into the power of social media now, your community is just sitting at your fingertips, you know. So it's yeah, I mean, and all that is important without losing focus on the day-to-day goals of enriching our guests with hopefully experiences at the table which are new and exciting, but also deliciously, you know, crafted and perfect for that moment, you know.
How do you see the next couple of years, and what are you loving about sort of the opportunities within the next generation of chefs that you're seeing coming through?
Well, the first part, the next couple of years, it's, I don't know, like polish up your crystal ball, I guess, you know, like, you know, like it's, I think we're talking about pretty deep and important concepts here so far in this conversation, and I think you know, being brutally honest with you about things. But I mean, the truth is, it's the last 5 years has decimated hospitality industry in Australia, and there's lots of times, and I've got no idea what the next 6 months will have before us. Like it's not predictable like it once was. It's just not. And it's not like we're out of control. Like we have no control over destiny. Like we don't know what's coming all the time. And it takes a toll, like it's not easy. It's not easy to keep showing up and keep being true to your intentions. It's pretty easy to melt down, I think, at the moment, and a lot of people have. And I think, if people are trying to do this alone, like I can't imagine. Like it's just, there's this balance of like, go the small business way, and it's easy because you don't have the staff costs and the issues and the HR problems and whatever. But like, can you imagine like the work it takes to run a high level cooking and serving business one-on-one with guests, their expectations today, with no support? Like it's like it must be like, and days where you don't want to go to work and you've just got to go because you've got to put food on the table for your kids, or you owe it to your guests, your bookings and stuff, like, and I think it's easy to sit back and observe and think things are great, but things are not great. Things are definitely not great operationally for restaurants in, I think, particularly Victoria at the moment. Like it's a nightmare. Like it's hard, and it's not. There's not the energy. We feel like we're always trying to prove the worth of what we do. There's, like I think, there's 2 points in the current food guides for value, and I just wonder how you measure value without knowing the costs of things. Like everything's currently being, well, not everything, obviously, not everything, but like a big part of living in a low economic moment with stresses and the build-up of what's happened from let's say from COVID, like, is that we are valuing things based on what we spend all the time as a high priority, and although that's valid to a point, like it's like you don't know how little we're passing on, like you don't know, is the expectation that this business makes money, because it doesn't, like it's just, this property's primed to run like it did in 2017 to 2019 when, we did 1,000 covers a month and the whole world was looking at Australia for a moment there, and now we don't do that. So it's everything is a battle. And so if you're involved creatively in a project such as this, along with considering, all the other stuff all the time, it's a challenge. So the next few years, good luck finding that out. You will find that out as time, literally as time ticks on, it'll just reveal itself. And as much as that's uncomfortable, it's a bit of like what we've learned in the last few years to roll with that. But it does make it hard to plan and support your team properly in terms of rewarding time through salary, so to speak. Like it's there's a lot of sacrifice occurring within our industry. I think the sacrifice is not being understood at this moment. We're not just sacrificing because some people don't go home at night. We're sacrificing because we just don't know what's around the corner. And with every moment, we're scrutinised more and more. With every moment in this industry, the scrutiny becomes more acute, I believe. Through the sharing of social media and people's experiences and all those types of things, which is, again, like I get it, like it's fine, like it's all good, but it is something that we deal with, and then the next generation, I just hope they can stick it out. Like I hope we continue to have an industry where there is an appreciation for long-term learning, where there is an appreciation for craft and skill set being developed over time, and understanding and context is important. That your place in the big picture is still understood and relevant, and obviously the greater diversity of offering is amazing. It's great. Like it's wonderful to see, particularly in Australia, like so many different types of hospitality businesses being appreciated. I think within that, it's still important to recognise the work that goes into, being a professional and someone who's always evolving, and there's lots to learn, and history's important. The classics are still important. The base level of classical understanding of where cooking has come from across multiple cultures that exist in our place will always be important. Knowledge is a stepping stone to creativity, 100%. And yeah, but I mean, I think we're in good hands. We have a young kitchen team, and they're dedicated. They're very dedicated. They do the work. They don't shy away. And they're learning a lot, because they're learning. They're learning a lot, but they're being exposed and they're being expected to learn a lot. I guess I'm teaching with all the knowledge that I have, and my knowledge, I believe, is improving day to day. So I'm exposing my team to all I know. There's no secrets. You work here, you have everything. Like, it's all yours. And that's probably a lot some days. There's a lot of concepts and a lot of thought, a lot of stuff. They're just like, fuck, leave me alone, mate. But I learn from that too. So we're all learning, So yeah, I mean, I think again, there's been a drop away from people joining our industry, and there's been a number of people leave the industry. And so I think for those who are wishing to join it or find themselves within it at a new or junior level, more than ever, it's probably important to seek out good mentors, and also, remain humble and appreciate the work of those who have come before you, and to just to search out what's relevant to you as a cook, and follow that path, because what's been true to be widely appreciated in our industry is singular voices. So, sort of take from the field and then create something that's yours, to give back when it's your time if you choose to, So it's important to spend some time learning before you start to, which is an obvious comment, I suppose, but, I guess do the work before you give back, and then just give back with everything you got, I guess.
That's amazing advice, and 5 years was far too long, Dan. We should catch up sooner. What an absolute honour. I know you've got so many more stories, so we'll have to catch up again soon. So please keep in touch.
Lots of good stories, actually.
And we'll have to catch up again.
Speak to you soon, mate.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.